Another piece of huge news for the Texas Longhorns, Jelani McDonald, the star safety out of Waco Connolly High, is set to return for a final year on the 40 acres. One of the biggest gainers as a junior from sophomore to junior season, one of the most productive defensive players on this Texas team in 2025, is returning to play his final year at Texas. He'll be doing so under Will Muschamp, which we'll get to later in the show. But Rod, your initial reaction to Jelani McDonald returning to Texas?
It's huge for that secondary. I mean, this is a guy that checks so many boxes for you. I mean, he can be a force for you in the running game, and he actually takes a lot of pride in that, coming down and being a force in the running game. Can run the alley, be a really nice alley cat for you. Also is a guy that can, I think ultimately for Texas make plays. He's a playmaker, right? He's a ball hawk. He has a great instincts, got a nose for the football. I was joking with him earlier this year that, he dropped a couple of interceptions, or at least, a couple of them went off his hands, ended up with 3. Probably should have had 4 or 5 interceptions. That's what kind of knows for the football he has. So I think he's got great kind of ball hawking skills because he always finds a way to be around the football. And I think ultimately his physicality. And that's what Muschamp's going to like about this young guy. I mean, as a safety, and he being a safety himself by trade, he's going to like the fact that Jelani McDonald likes to bring the hammer. And that he liked that being a part of his identity and a part of his DNA. And most DBs, right, we don't want to brag about how physical we are. We want to brag about how skilled we are. No, Jelani McDonald wants people to know that he's a physical dude and has a mentality of physicality at the safety spot.
CJ, Jelani McDonald's gone from 2 tackles to 33 tackles to 73 plus the plays on the ball. What do you make of his return? How big of this is for Texas? And I know you have all the numbers on him, so throw them out there for Texas fans.
Yeah, Rod, you mentioned, the physicality and the willingness. Jelani's kind of made that his personality. When he's on the field, he's going to hit you, right? And we've heard him talk a little bit about how he and Anthony Hill, you can throw Anthony Smith in that conversation too. They take pride in setting the standard for the biggest hit in practice, of course, in games. We've all seen Jelani bring the wood, but how about this? A team leading 73 tackles this year. He had 4 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 3 passes defended. I mean, this is a guy that finds the football. And again, I go back to, was it late September? We heard Steve Sarkisian call him, quote, a turnover machine. Yeah, it makes sense. He just finds ways to make plays on the football. Jelani had a fumble recovery against San Jose State. He had the interception against UTEP, another interception against Sam Houston State. He basically just dominated early on in the season. You sat there and said, okay, well, teams are going to find ways to not have to deal with number 4. I actually thought it was very fitting that he took Andrew Makuba's number 4 and had a very, replicable season, if you will, back deep. But this is fantastic for Texas because it's a very stable player with a very high floor and a very high ceiling back deep in the Texas secondary. And it's a guy that's been known to make plays, and it's very exciting for what this Texas defense can build into next season.
Guys, and there was a 4-game stretch in the begin SEC play this year. Florida, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. 3 of those road games, that was the whole month when they were on the road. He had 39 tackles in 4 games, never playing in Austin in the SEC. That's an impressive 4-game run in the SEC for a safety. Rod, you mentioned it earlier. How do you think he fits potentially with Will Muschamp and then talk about if he ascends again next season, what could he be looking at as an NFL prospect?
Oh man, easily the thing that translates, to Muschamp's system is just he's a physical player. We've all kind of used that term when describing him. And that's what Muschamp, I'm sure, loves about him or will love about him. It jumps off the screen to you when you see 4 out there on the field. He's getting his nose in there early. I think he's going to like the fact that he can play the run from depth. I say this all the time. It's a very underrated skill for safeties to be able to play the run from depth and actually run the alley successfully and accurately, take a good angle to the football. Jelani McDonald's one of the best on the team. That's why he's leading the team in tackles, as CJ brought up. It is not because he's always the last line of defense kind of tackling. No, he takes really great angles in the run game. And you can put him in the box. You can just literally put him in the box as a linebacker. He's got that frame. He's got the frame where it's like, I can put him down as a linebacker, and he is not a liability in the run game too. So I think that's what Muschamp's going to like about the versatility. He's a movable chess piece. I can put him at the second level. I can have him as a center field safety. I think you can actually maybe underrate, and they didn't use a lot of them in blitzing and trying. I think you can actually use him as a blitzer too. And they didn't do that a lot. Mostly it was Michael Taft. They would blitz at times. Remember before that, year before that, Jay Barron would be the guy they would blitz times. I think you can blitz Jelani McDonald. I bet that's a little underrated part of his game. So I think the versatility and the physicality are the two most important traits that are going to translate for him to the Muschamp scheme. And also the NFL scouts are also going to love. They're going to love the physicality from a safety that also can make plays and be a playmaker. And also a guy that, ultimately that I can move around the chessboard and a quarterback won't be able to identify, oh man, they're going to be in single high. They're going to be in two high. Or, if Jelani McDonald's lined up here, he's only he's a guy that's only going to be able to play, at the second level. Like this is a guy that you really can move around the entire chessboard and try to confuse and disguise coverages a lot.
Hey, CJ, so with Jelani McDonald returning, you have Grayson Littleton, who started games at nickel this year. Will he stay at nickel? Will he play corner? That's up to Will Muschamp. We'll see how all that works out. Then you have a young Cade Phillips, who started playing more and more as the season went on at corner, especially late in the season. What does this do for the secondary as a whole? And then we're going to kind of close this out looking at what does Texas need in the portal in the secondary, even with this news.
Well, it stabilizes the safety position quite a bit, right? Because that's one of your two big-time starters. And, for all the rotations and all the depth that we saw in 2025, safety didn't really deploy that level of rotation, right? You basically saw Michael Taft, Jelani McDonald play about 75 or 80% of your snaps back deep. Yeah. The only reason why they weren't on the field is if they got dinged up. So Texas liked what they had in those two safeties. Jelani returning, obviously, it basically locks down one of those other spots. So the other question is, does Will Muschamp, does the Texas defensive staff end up turning to Xavier Phil-Samir or a Zealous Hicks or a Jonah Williams, right? So that's going to be really interesting. At corner, look, I think Texas needs either a big nickel to come in and compete for that spot or a cornerback as well to come in and say, hey, Cade Phillips, hey, Grayson Littleton, we like what you got, but we want to progress this room further. For a guy like Kobe Black even, how does he fit in the cornerback, in that safety room? Perhaps we'll see. But there's, obviously new blood coming into coach. You got a lot of talent. Now it's about how to deploy them all together. Getting Jelani to return, Jerry, I think is very impressive. And I'll lead you into this because, look, I talked to somebody out of Waco earlier in December. I said, hey, Jelani's got a decision. Do you think the NFL would be on the table? I said, first and foremost, absolutely. They're receiving NFL grades this year. However, if he continues to ascend on the current track that we've seen from 24 to 25, and he does that again in 26, that's a guy that has first round, top 50 level pick all over him. I wanted to get your thoughts in that regard as well.
Yeah, Rod, where do you see Jelani's ceiling as a potential pro prospect if he has another ascending season on the field?
That's why I'd like to see them use him in a variety of ways, right? I think the safety is a non-premium position for the most part overall, unless a guy – think about it, Caleb Downs, right? He's about to be drafted really high for a safety. What is it going to be drafted? Top 15, somewhere around there. And go look at the multitude of ways he is weaponized on that defense. And that's why they're going to draft him, Mike, because you can put him in the box. You can put him back deep. You can line him up in the slot. You can blitz him if you like to. You can put him as a hole player. You can put him as a spy. There are so many different things you can do with him, and that ultimately is going to make him more attractive to NFL teams because that's going to make him more compatible with different systems, right? If you're a guy that can only do one or two things, that means only 8 NFL teams see you as an asset for them. If you can do a lot of different things, man, that's 25, 30 teams that's like, you know what? Actually, he works in our system. That's what I love about Jelani McDonald. I think he works in every system.
Yeah.
Because of his versatility, there's not a system that, is like, actually in this system, you can't maximize his talent. You can move him around depending on what you need and depending on what your defense is lacking. And that's why I think he does have a chance. And he's toolsy. He's got some freaky traits. Whether you're talking about the frame, he was an athlete coming out of high school. He's just got. I think his 40. I think his vertical is going to be really good.
Oh, yeah.
showing how explosive he is, and maybe like his broad jump's going to be really good. Showing how explosive he is. So he's going to impress some folks at the combine. I think he might put on a bit of a show there. But for a safety, you got to show a lot of tools, and you got to show that you got a lot of versatility. He does have that ability. And those are the best safeties in the NFL, the ones they feel like, I mean, this guy, like a Kyle Hamilton, they can do damn near anything. That guy may be worth drafting higher than most safeties. So I think he's got the raw ability and frame to be a higher round draft pick at safety. But like I said, that's a tall task. I'm not gonna lie, that's a tall task. He's one of the few that can do it, though.
I always go back to the Michigan game at Michigan when he played some nickel in that game. I said, he's got some football IQ because he was a young football player at that time, and that was a big environment. Yeah. I thought that was pretty meaningful for where he could go as a player. All right, that's going to do it, guys. For CJ Vogel, for Rod Babers, Jelani McDonald is returning to Texas for one more season as a Longhorn. All right, Jelani, we always leave you guys with this. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.